Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Court of the Rings on twitch.tv/LoTroStream. I'm Community Manager Cordovan, and I'll be with you for the next hour here, hanging out, having some fun. We'll be in game. But first, I have got a guest with me, so let me get the guest on the screen. I believe everything is working here, and we have got with us Vastin. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Great, great. Glad to have you on the show here today. I don't think we've had you on much, really
No,
all
never.
that
This is
much.
my first
So,
one, actually.
but the reason we have you on here today is because we're doing some work related to power, mastery, and damage. These are three subjects that are pretty big topics in the Lord of the Rings Online, and we're doing some changes to it in Update 35. And so we thought it'd be good to have you on to talk as a follow up to the information we put out for Bull Roar this week, to have you on the show here this Friday to do some Q&A with the community, get some questions answered, and talk a little bit about what we're doing here beyond just the text. So I kind of said a few weeks ago, and I need to correct myself on the air because it just isn't true, that a lot of people haven't had to deal with power in a long time. But it also is kind of true because while you've had to deal with power perhaps leading up to what, about level 90 or so, and you have to deal with
Yeah,
power
about.
sometimes in raiding situations, there are a group of players out there who really don't have to deal with their power very much. And so when they hear that Update 35 has got some power updates where it's going to matter or matter again, they kind of wonder, well, what does that mean? I guess I really need to get up to speed on what power even is and how it works and why I need to care. And so I think that's part of why we have you on the show here today, is to help onboard some people and get some things answered about what's really changing here, related to our power update. So we're going to go into some detail, but in a general sense, what are the goals here with this power update?
Yeah, so, I mean, power was always a part of Lotro. It's still technically a part of Lotro in the early to mid game. And then it kind of like just fell off. We didn't keep up the progressions for it quite the way we should have. And so eventually it became, yeah, actually, to get into the details of it, what specifically happened is Fate always kind of gave you some power regen. And when our stats were just kind of increasing linearly, that worked out fine. Like you could, get some more power regen with your fate, but it wasn't a big deal. But when we started hitting the late game, because your stats increased exponentially, that went really out of whack. And what happened is with fate increasing by such large numbers, suddenly your regen just went woo through the roof, and we didn't really catch that
Yeah.
for a while. Like we just didn't quite notice it until it had become pretty severe, and then we were like, oh wow, look, power's kind of a non-thing anymore because of that. And so we're trying to correct that. Wasn't really an intentional change. It didn't really bother us hugely because, of course, yeah, I mean, power is a tricky mechanic to balance. We just had so many other things on our plate that we were like, okay, well, whatever. But we have a little more firepower now on our systems team, and so we're trying to get back in and like make stuff like that work and make sense throughout the game. It's like it's really weird when you have an aspect of the game that exists through like two-thirds of the game, and then it just kind of goes away. That's
Yeah.
eh.
Yeah.
Um, and it is supposed to be like a part of the game in terms of like managing longer term fights and so on. Now we definitely don't want it to feel like you're choking on it all the time, not by any stretch of the imagination. So we're probably gonna like once we get the numbers worked out properly, we're probably gonna softball it, particularly to start with, so that it's really just not that hard. Um, One of the reasons we're doing it now is so that we do have time to work with it for like our next big level update, for example, and get everything in a good place, so that it's not like this brand new thing on top of a level update and so on.
All right. I have a thread up here. I don't think I can actually scroll on the thread due to the way that this thing is working. So let me just kind of quick on camera here move our cameras here so we can talk a little bit about it. But we had put up a thread in the Bull Roar forums that I would encourage people to take a look at that really gets into a lot of the detail. Some of this detail might be too much to really kind of talk about on the air, as it were, but at the same time, um, this really kind of gets into the meat of what we're talking about here. So, power, what are we doing with power regeneration?
So power regen, as I said, it used to be primarily driven by fate,
Yeah,
which wasn't scaling well with how power itself worked. So we're rejiggering all that so that most of your power regen now it just goes up as you level primarily, and we're going to get the gearing. Like who've played the game for a long time are familiar with power regen gearing from some of the lower levels where that was available, particularly in the late game for those within those level bands. And so we want to bring that back as well, get the potions back into play, just so players have tools to work with and things to go after to help deal with power as the fights get longer in later game content like six mans and raids. Um, for solo play, we don't expect it to really be much of a factor, particularly for like the casual landscape player, just because the fights there generally don't go long enough for it to matter. Um, right now,
yeah.
we'll wander through the classes are way off the numbers we need them to be, but we'll get that fixed pretty quickly, I think. Um, uh, so we expect that just won't be much of an issue for the easier content. Solos who are doing like really high-end challenge content like the delvings, that could get interesting, and they may have to take it more into account because some of those fights can run long enough for it to really matter. The other thing we're doing is trying to make sure that all the classes have appropriate tools available in all their build variations to like generate their own power quickly or to restore power quickly in an emergency. A lot of characters already have tools like that, but some of them have kind of gotten out of date, so we're needing to refresh them. And a few of them really didn't actually have very good tools. So we're trying to make sure that they do.
Excellent.
Um,
The actual your power number is going to be changing quite a bit as well, as I understand it.
oh yeah, so one of the most basic things is power kind of like plateaued off at 6,000 for a long time, um, plus or minus a little bit for statting. Now we're just having it scale up throughout the game, just like the other stats do, so that to just so it makes more sense in relation to all the other stats. Um, the the regen scales up with it. Um, you can increase your power pool directly via fate now that we changed how fate works, so that like if you just want a bigger battery, you just like pile up some fate and get it that way. We're still tweaking the ratios on that.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll maybe put a pin in it, as they say, and come back to fate here in just a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of one big thing we changed, that doesn't really change the game itself at all, is we changed how it displayed. It used to be that all your power numbers were per minute, which made them look really weird in relation to everything else. We just changed all of that to per second. So you're going to see your regen number is actually going to shrink really small compared to where it used to be, but that's just because it's per second instead of per minute.
Per minute. Okay.
I don't know
Why
why
did
that
we
was per
do
minute.
that?
That was kind of, I don't know. That was a decision made long, long, long ago before I had anything to do with this.
Okay. All right. So when you're in combat, your power regen is going to matter, I think, probably much more significantly than it does today. I think in terms of how it impacts people on a practical basis, on a daily basis, this might be it.
Yeah, so the way it's been for a while now, if you stacked up just even a modest amount of fate on your character, your regen got so high that it was compared to your power costs and your power pool size that it was pretty much irrelevant. Like you just regen power, like you could pretty much fill your pool in a single tick if you really wanted to stack some fate on yourself. No need to. But that's how that worked. So we're just bringing that back down so it's a more relative thing where your power pool will refill in like around 45 seconds if you're not doing anything. If you're out of combat, it actually feels a good bit faster than that. It's like 15, 20 seconds.
So
If you're at zero at the end of the fight, which you usually won't be.
before I move on, then let's just talk brief. I guess we covered everything we need to cover related to fate. I think maybe we have actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, but if we is there anything left to
Yeah,
say about fate?
yeah, I think so. No, no, fate just it doesn't affect your regen anymore. Now it affects your pool size. Um, we
Yep.
probably need to find some other better value for fate for a number of builds, but that's what it's mainly doing at the moment.
Like I say, I'm having a specific issue with my stream software where I can't scroll down on this web page. And yes, I've tried right clicking and pressing interact. It's still not working. But the main thing I want to get to then is The big fear with an update like this would be, does that mean I'm going to run out of the thing, and what is that going to mean? So are people going to run out of the thing, and what does that mean?
I mean, you can run out of the thing. It's kind of, it is one of the challenges. Is like, okay, you may have to manage power in a in a longer fight. We do definitely not want it to like right now. We have one or two of the characters who can run out in like 15, 20 seconds. That's much too fast. We'll fix that. Um, we want to get it to the point where you can go probably at least a minute and a half, pretty much at full burn, without really thinking about it before you start running into trouble. And we may actually extend that a little bit. We're playing with how big we want that pool to be before you start running into trouble.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is the regen is actually fairly quick still in comparison to your lower skill power costs. So if you're just kind of cycling your simpler skills, you actually can do that forever without any real concern. So even if you manage to run yourself out of power, you're very quickly going to have access to your basic skills, including the ones that will help you generate power. Um, uh, so mostly it's like if you're comboing up to burn a lot of like really high end skills really fast during a DPS burst phase, that's when you're probably gonna like really eat through your power. But hopefully that we want to rebalance the fights a little bit so those phases don't go too long.
All right. I had to quick take off. For some reason, my Discord was starting to send a audio notification. I had to take care of that. So if people on stream are wondering what's up with the camera and the ding, that was what was up with that. I have now taken care of it. Sorry. All right. So really, then we had said we don't expect it to be a big issue for solo landscape combat. You're going to have minute and a half, roughly, something like that, before it's really going to matter. So things like raids, etc., are going to be a place where this matters quite a bit. So, what can people do to make the most of it? Like, what advice do you have in terms of, okay, well, if power is going to matter a bit more than it used to, what do I do?
I mean, the simplest thing, of course, is to start crafting potions and things like that. We have a number of ways in game to pretty easily get things like power pots for emergencies. Look at rotation a little bit and see if it's burning hotter than it needs to. For what you're dealing with, like if you expect a fight to go long, you may want to ease off the gas a little bit and operate a little bit more defensively or a little bit more towards sustain than just trying to burn things down instantly. Or you might actually take the opposite tack and be like, well, I'm just going to try and kill everything before I run out of power. Just really, really fast. Again, if you're just fighting a couple mobs on landscape, it's not going to be an issue. Most of those fights last like 15 seconds or less. So unless you're chain pulling endlessly, you're not going to care. But it might be an interesting challenge for like classes that like to pull like half a dungeon and then kite it. Yeah, you're gonna be in combat for a long time and you're gonna burn a lot of power, so you're gonna have to think about that carefully if you want to engage in that kind of like really more challenging pull and fight style.
All right.
But again, we're working on making sure that you do have skills so that you can change your rotation somewhat and actually regenerate power while fighting, as opposed to burning through it.
Before we move on then to mastery and damage, let's take a moment for the watchers, viewers, listeners to chime in here. Now would be a great time to ask any questions that you might have about what you just heard. And I'd be happy to see what we can do. And then in a minute or two here, we'll move on to combat and mastery. But I'm not seeing, let's see.
I'm seeing one about a couple of fights that drain out your power instantly.
Yes.
Those are just bad. They're also a result of that gradual balance change I was talking about. Like kind of unintentional. None of our fights should be instant nuking your power. So one of the advantages of this actually is we're going over a lot of those numbers right now and looking at these old effects, being like, oh god, this needs to be rebalanced. This needs to be rebalanced. So yeah, that has actually been a lot of my time is going through all the old stuff, being like, what is this effect doing? What is that effect doing? Does this make any sense anymore?
Yeah.
And trying to get them where they should be. We have a whole bunch of new scaling tools that I built in for powers that should make it easier, but like not everything's using them yet. So
Yeah, I actually though I just ran into that now that because I was watching the other now that I've been knowing this was coming, and I ran into some whites of some kind that were causing some power drain just fairly recently, and I was like, wow, okay, that's gonna matter, I guess, huh?
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. I'm hoping that it won't, matter too much. But when you run something that drains power, you're going to be more worried about power, obviously.
Yep.
You're either going to want to deal with them quickly, or make sure you have something to give you a quick restore before you finish them off, so you can finish them off, and then you know move on to the next fight.
When will these changes be implemented? This is for update 35. So this is the next big update that'll be coming to the game world. I believe we have I think we have a patch yet before update 35 arrives, but pretty soon it'll be within the next couple of months, and
Yeah.
it's got its first preview here on Bullroar as of this week. So
Yeah, we have at least a couple more bull roars, I believe, before this.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we've got some good time to work on this. I'm not too concerned.
So I like Haderb's question, and I'm going to shorten it a bit just to say, well, what does this mean for loot? In terms of the itemization about power that happens currently and in the future here, then in Lotro.
Yeah, so in terms of gearing and so on, like I just yesterday was making some new traceries and things like that, so that if somebody feels like they're having an annoying time with power, they can maybe make some changes on their LI to help deal with it. If they have some current tracery they have that isn't like helping that much, they can swap one of these in to help the power instead. Um, uh, we do anticipate having particularly instance like upper end instance gearing will start to
Mm-hmm.
feature power regen um, as a bonus on gear, definitely. We are looking at revamping some of the crafting stuff to so that power food and potions and so on will be significant features. I definitely want to get in a tier of raiding food, which we really don't have a good version of right now. Which is raiders run into some very specific problems where, or even just high-end instance players, where the fights go long and you can't eat during combat, or you eat your food, then you die and you get rezzed and it's gone, and you can't eat again while the fight's still going on. That's all just a giant pain in the butt for them. So we want to make a tier of food that has like the top tier crafted food or whatever that has longer durations and persists through death, so that these players can actually stay well fed during their fights.
Wow. Yeah, I like the sound of that. That sounds pretty good. And that I think goes to LJ Bookworm's question in chat, which is, what about these, longer raids? You can have not we don't do it a ton, but you can have 15, 20 minute long fights in Lotro.
Yeah,
Um, you
yes
know,
you can.
yeah. So are we going to look at some of those fights?
Oh yeah, yeah. Some of the bull roars we're hoping to once we've got the rough edges knocked off of the classes, we're hoping one or two raid groups. So at least we'll go and give some of these a spin. And it's one of the hardest things for us to test internally, unfortunately, because getting a whole raid group together, particularly at a competitive level, is very
Yeah,
difficult.
I think it's the second
We're not
half
that
that
big
can
a
be
company, so we
trickiest,
just
right?
don't have that many raiders internally.
Well, you've got to have a series of people in a live state, and that can also be a tricky part, right? It's not just, you've got to have the people to test all these things. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I think I think we've covered everything, have we not? No?
Regarding power, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we've touched most of the big bases. If
Yeah,
anybody
so
has any
let's move
questions.
over to the other one. That is also with update 35. We're working on some updates to general game mechanics, specifically about how mastery and damage modifiers are calculated in Lotro. So you're not only messing with my damage, but you're changing my numbers on me. And
Yep.
so let's talk a little bit about that really
Yeah.
briefly here.
So
So
if you glanced at it and didn't and don't do the math, it looks like the biggest goddamn nerf you've ever seen.
nice.
It's kind of hilarious,
Let
actually,
me
in the
fix
notes
this
because, of
quick.
course, so what we're doing for players who are vaguely familiar with the game math, there's been one kind of really annoying thing. we have a stat called Mastery in the game, which it's mainly a DPS stat, and they use it to increase their damage substantially, like up to 200%. Um, and it shows up as on your character sheet as a bonus. For most players, it'll be somewhere between 150 and 200. Um, uh, the problem is that it is treated like a standard damage bonus, just like all your other ones. And the way most of our damage bonuses work in the game is they are all added together. So it's like plus 20%, plus 30%, plus 70%. Those all get mashed together into plus 120%. Okay, great. Now the problem is that when you're starting with a plus 150 to 200% value, and then you're tacking little 10% onto the end of that, those 10% aren't going to affect your final damage by 10%. The way you might think it was. So it's like if I'm doing 1,000 points of damage with my mastery, and then I get a 10% buff, I'd be like, well, now I should do 1,100 points of damage. No, you're going to do like 1,040 points of damage or something. It's because it's been watered down effectively by this big mastery number. That's super annoying because it's not WYSIWYG at all. So
Yeah.
what we're doing is we're just separating out mastery, so it's its own multiplier. Nothing gets added to it. It just does its own part of the calculation, and then all your other things do still add together, but they're generally much smaller, so the watering down effect isn't nearly as bad. So now if you get a 10% buff, your damage should go up by something pretty close to 10%, which is way better. Like it's more fun. It makes more sense on paper. It's more intuitive. Now, it does mean that like every damage buff in the game just got a lot more powerful, which is why we brought the numbers down on most of them. As a rule, they probably got somewhere. It depends on what your mastery was, but a lot of those buffs really would have gotten like almost 3 times as powerful. Like generally about 2.5 to 3 times, depending on where your mastery was exactly. If your mastery was really low, you wouldn't actually notice the difference. But any character who cares about damage generally isn't going to have mastery that low. Um, so
So, in a
it,
practical sense, with update 35, you're saying I should, assuming I've invested in mastery, be seeing numbers approximately 2 to 3 times as great. Is that correct?
yeah, not in your overall damage. I'm talking about
Okay.
your actual buffs. Your base damage is the same.
Okay.
It's the effect you get from buffs will be increased over what you're used to.
Okay.
The effect of mastery itself hasn't really changed. It's just calculated in a separate step now. Um, so where you really feel it is with your buffs. And so if like somebody casts a buff on you to increase your damage, or if you use a self buff, that damage will be it will be more potent than it used to be. We reduced the numbers on them, but we didn't reduce the numbers by as much as they benefit from the change, if you catch my meaning. So overall damage numbers will probably go up in some cases, maybe more substantially than we want them to. So we may have to do a little bit of additional balancing depending.
Okay.
Classes that get a lot of buffs will probably feel pretty potent.
So when we're
Right now,
talking,
there's a bit of a bug with how it's actually being calculated that we have to sort out.
you're talking about on the first bull roar here.
Uh,
There's a bug on the first bull roar which is needs to be corrected for the second bull
yeah,
roar. Yeah.
what ended up happening is our tooltips all come out just right,
Okay.
and which is what we were gauging things off of. But it turns out that if you actually like test your damage in detail, the changes aren't really coming through in the real damage right now, which is
Okay.
aggravating. So we got to sort that out.
That's the nature of a first bull roar sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But okay, well, I mean, I think we've largely covered at least the player side of it, but then, of course, with damage, that's also all of your enemies then as well. So, what do you expect to see any of the changes here in regard to the enemies we're going to be fighting?
Not much. Enemies don't have mastery. Monsters don't have mastery.
Okay.
So they never were really watered down in the same way.
Okay.
So basically, I don't think they're gonna change much.
All right. Related to bull roars, then specifically, not just this first one, but the next couple that we're going to be doing, what would you find most useful to be able to get this out as successfully as possible?
I mean, the big thing is finding effects and situations that are just badly out of whack. The game is very, very big. There's a huge amount of data. for us to walk through and find all this stuff. And sometimes what we think looks good in data just isn't in the game, or vice versa. Um, so, and we're making a lot of changes. So getting feedback from players on just things that look broken, or just out of whack. That's the best thing. Yeah, just getting nice, reasonably detailed feedback on what's actually happening.
Well, before I move on to maybe the other half of the show here, where I'm going to do some gameplay and things, I did want to take a few minutes for a chance for players to just sort of ask you some general questions. So let's take these maybe last 5 minutes here. We'll do the first half of the show and just do some general Q&A with Vastin. So hit me up. What you got? Let's see a few questions here. Can you
Well, let's
explain
see.
what base morale is? I see debuffs doing damage like 3 times of base morale, and they don't seem to be 3% max morale. So I am wondering.
So things that affect things that act as multipliers on your health. So certain damage effects just do a percentage of the target's health. Um, those I don't believe are really affected by this kind of like I don't think those take mastery like at all. I think they just ignore it.
Okay.
So I don't think they're really affected. We're trying to move a little bit away from those. We're not dropping them, but there's been a frustrating effect where particularly self heals, being percentage based, that's like it's very easy to balance those comparatively, but we run into this problem where it really overvalues just stacking huge amounts of vitality on your character,
Hmm.
because your heal just goes straight up with your vitality all the time, and that's been a little bit of a problem. Um, but so we're looking at some of that, seeing if we can get that leveled out a little bit.
Herb asks, speaking of multipliers, will the revamp make the percentage tactical critical multiplier buffs more or less effective?
I don't think critical multipliers will really be affected either way, because again, they are affecting kind of a different part of the damage calculation than the base damage. Like crit happens after all this other stuff and kind of gets stacked on top of it. So things that change your chance of critting or change your crit magnitude, they're just going to continue to do what they did. It's important to note also that this math change right now doesn't extend beyond damage. Like we're not doing it to all the other, like your defensive calculations and things like that. We're looking at it because there are some similar issues in other parts of the game. Like healing has the same issue with outgoing healing percentage modifiers. That's always been smaller though, so it's not as noticeable an effect.
Okay. Are
Yes,
we?
we'll
Yes.
be adding traceries
We
to
have a
do
question. Let me
reduction.
before you answer. Let me ask the question so that people in hindsight
Oh,
can know what
sure.
we're talking about. Are we
Hmm.
adding any legendary traceries such as power reduction to help with long fights?
Yes, I just made them yesterday.
When update 35 here, or do we
Yeah.
know? Okay, okay,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely certain what channels they're going to go into the game through, like exactly how they're going to be rewarded, but I just made them, so they do exist already.
okay. Um, there's a little bit of a little personality conflict happening in chat. I'm trying to sort through questions amongst it, so just relax, folks. It's cool. No one saying anything that I saw too rough.
So part of the I've seen a number of questions now regarding raid balance, and so there's a couple things regarding that. One, we probably are going to have to tweak some of the raids, a little bit at least, to deal with it, particularly ones that use power mechanics themselves, like power attack mechanics. Going to make sure that those are reasonably balanced. The other thing is, as I said, we're going to try and softball this in to start with,
Hmm.
where power is a factor, but not a very difficult factor to overcome, in terms of like getting enough gearing or just working with your group composition a little bit to make sure that you have enough power restoration mechanics available that you can kind of get back to the point where you can burn hot pretty steadily through a fight.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, and the easiest thing, I mean, the biggest thing people are concerned about are enrage mechanics, which is understandable. And a rage mechanic is it's a race, and so it's hard to take your foot off the gas. But enraged mechanics are very easy to relax a little bit. Um, you can add 30 seconds to the enrage timer, and you have a good bit of additional window to work with in order to like manage your manage your power. Um, or adding a few gaps between the waves where they might be a little too rapid fire right now, things like that.
All right.
But the enrage timers in particular are themselves easy to change, and so if I saw a raid where we thought people were really gonna have a problem with it, my first thing would be to suggest that content adjust those raid timers, yeah, the enrage timers. Sorry.
We have a question. So, specifically, will the changes be gradual over several updates? The answer to that is no. The changes we're discussing today will be in Update 35, but we will be making further adjustments to the system once it's out to optimize it and just deal with anything we need to deal with in a practical sense. The reason is to add a little bit more choice, complexity, use the mechanics that we have available in the game as gameplay, not punish people and make it much of a pain point. Is for, at least what I'm hearing here, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. I do see a few loot questions. I don't know how much you can you get into any of the loot questions? Do you have much knowledge about that?
I am not handling loot very much right now. Like, I create some of it, particularly like tracery type stuff, but I don't so much handle the channels by which they are distributed. So if people have specific questions about like how they get the loot, nah, I'm not your best person to ask.
I do see a question I don't personally know the answer to, unfortunately, which is Carillianity, Ceruleanity wants to know, are pets being impacted by power and damage changes? I don't know myself.
Pets don't have mastery, so again, they probably are not, or at least should not be affected. They might be being affected by the bug, for example. Right now, I'm not sure about that. Um, I would prefer that they not be affected by the power changes in any significant way. And so if I see that they are, I think I may go in and m- give them enough regen that they don't care. Having to manage your pet's power, that's a bridge too far. I have no interest. I have no interest in bothering anyone. That's annoying.
Okay. Mm, so just make sure you get some power potions, huh? Have some power potions on hand.
I mean, that's obviously the
Yeah,
simplest
yeah,
solution, aside from like and as you said, most classes right now actually have power emergency buttons so they can whack that people probably like haven't been paying attention to for quite a long time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So just make sure those are on your bar and
Great.
use them occasionally.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, Vastin. I really appreciate you being on the show. I'm going to let you take the rest of your lunch and then get back to work, of course. But really appreciate you joining me here for Court of the Rings.
Great talking with you.
All right.
Good to see you, folks.
Just for the show here, I'm going to quick move back to the coming soon screen, and I'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. All right. Hey, thanks. Sorry it took a little longer than expected. I had some stuff I had to do real quick. I accidentally unplugged my monitor. That's what happened. Oh, I must have been killed while waiting out in the out in Cardalon. Let me swap to the game screen, but I need to real quick see if I can. There we go. I need to get a transition going. I need to kill Discord before I swap screens. How's everyone doing? Yeah, things got kind of heated in chat a little bit. Everyone it's getting a little rough there. It's kind of hard to do that. Get questions answered. People are arguing. All right, there we go. I think I'm almost there. A second. I think I'm back. But yes, I got killed. I'm in a task, or I'm in a res circle. That's not where I was standing when I started the show here at noon today. I was in the middle of that white blot. I guess that's what happens. So, what are we up to? We have got a character. This is a low-level character on Crick Hollow. Currently level 17. Going to be 18 here real soon. And I'm running through the Before the Shadow content. And mostly, at the moment, I guess, going back to where I was. Fighting some wolves and boars and going through the storyline. Oh, I also have my audio turned down. Thus why I was not hearing myself getting defeated. Thanks for being on the show, Vastin. I thought that went really well. It was really nice to see him on the stream. So, thanks. And thanks to the audience for being real cool. So I appreciate that too. When you first hear inside of the office that we're going to be updating power, my forum manager blood is like, we're doing what? No. It was fine. I would rather not try to duplicate what Vastin said off the cuff here. We can watch the show yourself later and find out. But yes, we did talk about mastery and damage here over the past 10, 15 minutes or so. I think the general sense is it's going to be about the same, but you'll see things in general go up. Your damage will be higher with these changes, but everything is roughly in terms of the overall impact intended to be largely flat. So the power revamp much more, I guess, significant in terms of actual play experience, but even then, as he was saying, we're going kind of light on it, and we want to be more conservative rather than more risky with it, which is probably why it may get some additional work here in future patches as needed. But ideally, only for the betterment of things. That's the goal anyway. Right, I'm heading back to wherever those sickle flies are. This is, yeah, that's where I was defeated, is up here, so let me do that. I think we should get Vastin on the show a whole lot more. I've been very much enjoying this trend of being able to get some developers on. Now, I don't want to set expectations too high. I can't do this every week. People are busy and they have actual work to do, and maybe don't always want to be on the show, which is fine. But I do like to get people on when I can, and I think it's been very helpful to have the folks doing the work beyond these shows. I think we learned a lot from having on Mac Mahal on the show. A couple weeks ago, we've had a lot, as always, from having Scenario on the show. And by the way, Scenario's got his next casual stroll with Scenario going to, is it Eastern Rohan, I think? And that'll be next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and that'll be on this Twitch channel here. We did have Orion on several times recently, and that's been really good as well. And so I'm hoping to be able to continue doing that here in the coming months when we can. Alright, so I think all I've got left is the red sickle flies. I have to go get those. And then if I want to do the wolf pack, I need to do that. But I don't know if I'm going to. Yeah, we've really did try to make, when I say we've tried to make an effort, I mean, we really did spend a bunch of time trying to put all this information in one place, collated, presentable, everything like that. Not just for the public. I mean, let's be real here. It helps us as well to have good, clear information like this. But being able to present it to the forums and elsewhere, I think, was really important, especially when we talk about some of these systems changes. And so, whenever we can, it's something I absolutely do want to do. I'm too short for this. I really feel like being up over in my neck in the sickle flies. The thought has crossed my mind about, can we get an engineer on to talk specifically about game performance? It's difficult because not everyone who does that work wants to be on camera, and they don't have to be, and it's not part of their job description to be. They don't want to be. That's fine. But I also know that there are some people, like, I remember there have been some discussions about how could we present that. You don't want to get too bogged down, but you also don't want to kind of just go off the cuff either. That's the sort of thing you need to think quite a bit about. Well, how are you going to present it? What are you going to say? What are you going to show? How do you show it? What can you show? And all these kinds of things. So I would never say never on that. I thought specifically, so a while back, I guess this was maybe even over the summer, I had seen a bunch of charts and graphs where we were measuring some of the hitching reports that we were investigating with a specific cause at that time. And we were able to really get a visual sense of how the work that had been done made an impact pre and post patch. And I remember at that time I was like, wow, I would love to just put that graph up on screen. But the problem is it talks about all sorts of proprietary information in that same chart and graph that we can't really just blast out on a Twitch channel, things like that. So, and then if you don't include all the information on it, then I don't know. So it kind of got a little bogged down in process and detail. And thinking about, well, okay, you can't really actually just put this chart up, so then what could you show? But yes, that idea of doing some kind of focus on sort of the crunchier side of our game performance and lag work is something that has been on my mind. I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. I'm just going to be real with you. I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. But it has been on my mind as something I would like to do someday. And so perhaps there will come a time where we can do something not just to answer current calls of, fixed lag or whatever, but to actually provide some hopefully valuable and interesting and insightful information to you about that. So that would be the goal. We'll see. I need to collect firewood. That's what I'm doing. Where am I collecting firewood? Why am I not seeing any firewood? This isn't firewood. Alright. That's because I'm back this way, I guess. Probably by the trees, huh? When looking for firewood, look at trees. Oh, I know why I'm not seeing firewood. That's because I have names off. Okay. Well, that'll help. Well, that made a big difference in my ability to find this firewood. Okay. I wondered why I was like, I've been out here for a while. I haven't seen any firewood. Okay. So now we're heading back to Crossway House. Couple of quick show notes then. I would mention that I am not doing a show next week. I'll be out of the office next Friday. So no show, no Court of the Rings next Friday. But I will have a show the week following. You did see that Bull Roar is active right now. That goes, I think the plan is early mid-afternoon tomorrow. The first preview will end, and then we'll get things rolling again within a few weeks with preview 2. I can maybe look real quick and get more specific information than that. We have got the end of the Sark Vorn leading the charge deed happening. That's happening, if I recall. Well, maybe I should not try to do this while riding down the road. But when did that stop me? 2:15, is that correct? My brain says 2:15. Let's look real quick on the event schedule and find out. No. Yes. Yes, through February 15th, being shut off at 3 a.m. Eastern on February 16th. Is the Sark Vorn leading the charge deed. Next week, of course, as well, we have got the Season 5 of the Legendary Items Reward track happening. So make sure to do what I just did, which is to log into your characters and make sure you're up to date on claiming your Legendary Item Rewards. Wait a second. Oh, I need to refill the braziers first. The idea of having a group full of devs running quests has been around for quite a few years, but in practice making it happen and successful has not. So I don't know. Maybe someday. Maybe someday. That would be fun. and terrifying. And maybe somewhat judgy. I don't know. I think it would be difficult to live up to expectation. I think finding 5 other people who'd be like, yeah, let me put my gameplay up to general player judgment is going to be the challenge there. I'm just saying.
The braziers are refilled, and Madoc's pantry has been newly filled. Good. I hope we have done enough, my friend. This night may be a hard one. We have prevailed.
So, you know, we know, I think, as watchers, what's going on.
For I
but
fear that whatever evil came to this town will be back.
they've been having problems with dark evil in the night. We were able to convince people, just for tonight, to try to stay in the Crossway House. But not everyone wanted to go. Oops.
Pull up a seat. We should rest while we can. Perhaps nothing will happen, but
I cannot remain idle, friend Meneldir, while danger approaches. My station shall be at a window, keeping watch.
it will be some hours until dawn, Boromir.
Yes,
It is of
I
no
think
use, Ranger.
it is true to say that most of the developers play the game.
They lower their guard only when slain.
Almost all of them do.
You have heard it from them alone, I imagine.
Aye, and loudly. Still, it is a trait the Rohirrim might have used, and spared some sorrow. The land of my people is not what it was. A kingdom draws strength from its king.
Boromir spoke to us of Theoden's ailment. It prevented his audience. When we reach the Dunedain, they will surely...
Hey, Arthur,
know some
I'll
remedy
talk
for
about your
King
question here in
Rohan.
just a second.
Yes.
Saruman the Wizard is a friend of Rohan. His knowledge of remedies and curatives might have proved some help to your king. What is it, Egfrith? You have gone quite pale.
Ginger, I will make a note today to get back to you over, I guess, Twitch chat here with some questions.
Fear the wizard might
I've
not
lost you because I'm mostly on the forums for Extra Life, but I remember that I need to get back in touch with you. I don't remember what you want, but I'll look up the chart, and if I've got it, I'll
That seems
mail
the
it to you
wisest course.
through Twitch messaging today. Yes, there was an issue where we couldn't quite message each other, but I think that's solved now. So I'll make sure I get back to you today, Jinjar. You need your Extra Life stuff, and I'll make sure you get it. Yes, we will be doing an anniversary-related live stream, probably even including some in-game madness as it goes. But I'll have more information about that as we get closer to it. I may have a specific issue, though, with this year's Lotro anniversary. which is that I guess I don't know if I can say what date. Some date very close to our anniversary on the Lotra side, I have been summoned for jury duty. This is something, if you're not in the United States or operate under a different system, maybe you're not familiar with, but if you're a voter, essentially, you can get called into jury duty. And you don't have a choice. You got to show up. And so, regardless of whether it's Lotra's 16th anniversary or not, I may, in fact, be sitting in a courthouse somewhere doing my civic duty. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So it may be a couple days before or a couple of days after or whatever, I guess. But we'll see. Yeah. The question, though, I wanted to answer is... Well, actually, before I answer that, Idle Hands, I have not heard of any plans to bring the Flowing Silver Stone halted XP, but with stats, to the Lotra store. If we ever do bring something like that, it'll be announced in our sales messaging, but I would not, I think, expect that to happen anytime soon. I think those are going to stay with perhaps extra bonuses with bigger projects we have going on. General question Egarther asks about SSG structure. When I say system, how does that differ from other areas of game development? It's not always obvious to outsiders. I apologize about that. Generally inside of the office, and some studios are going to perhaps work differently, but we have people who tend to focus on systems, people who tend to focus on world building, quest building, and that aspect of content creation. We have game engineers, which tend to do a lot of the kind of heavier technical coding work related to things like game performance, server optimization, all that other kind of thing. You know, we've got a marketing department. We have a community team
We have all had dreams like that.
of one, which is technically under the marketing department, but isn't really the same as in terms of structure and operation as, say, like some of the folks who work on sales and revenue and things like that. And then, of course, there's kind of an administrative production team as well. So you've got folks who are producers, executive producers, and things like that. So typically the way it breaks down, and we have, it gets a little muddy because we have members of the development team who do cross work, right? So maybe they work on, I guess shorthand would be content and systems, although they're both content. You know, but content is often a shorthand kind of way to describe world building and quest building and things like that. So you'll have people who go across that, but a lot of times things like building new trait trees would be a systems task. Itemization is largely the in-game numbers part, at least, is part of the systems task. And then, of course, they hook it up to the art and other work, that's animation work and things like that, that's done. And that differentiates a little bit from, say, perhaps the kind of work that Scenario does, which is world building out in the creating the vast landscapes, or someone like Pinion, who is crafting the raid space or instance space or something like that. Although Pinion in particular is well versed across the platform. But that's what I mean when I say systems generally is the processes and systems used. Legendary items, that's a systems task, or it often falls under the systems umbrella. PvMP would often fall under a systems umbrella. Things like that. Whereas world building and quest building and story development often falls, although they, like I said, there's a lot of cross-pollination there, but often would fall under a different sort of role. Yeah, I mean, I too am actually kind of looking forward to maybe being a juror. I've been called theoretically to jury duty a few times, so I've never actually been a juror, and I don't know that that's going to happen this time either. It probably won't. But most of the other times, it's every other time it's been canceled before I actually had to go to the courthouse. Whereas this time it sounds like maybe I'm going to a courthouse. So they've sent me mail and everything. I have a little packet. I don't know where that is. Let me check the information on it first before I do that. Yeah, State of Massachusetts Trial Juror's Handbook, which they didn't get that last time. So I don't know. But let's focus, though, on Lord of the Rings. Boromir had a dream. It wasn't good. Seek the sword that was broken, it said. In Imladris it dwells. There will be counsels taken stronger than Morgul's spells. That is of great interest to a son of Gondor. Any means of countering the evil that pour from the Morgul Vale are welcome in Minas Tirith. The voice continued, there shall be shown a token that doom is near at hand, for Isildur's bane shall waken, and the halfling forth shall stand. Boromir stares. I must apologize. I confess I thought you may have been the halfling spoken in the dream. Perhaps you are still not. For my brother to dream of this doom, the doom of Minas Tirith on so many nights, and then for the same dream to come to me, I fear we are running out of time.
This is why you seek Imladris? You did not tell Saruman the purpose of your journey.
Perhaps I was being foolish. Perhaps it is only a dream. But if it is not, if the sword that was broken might save Minas Tirith.
You would do anything to save your home.
Aye, Egfrith, that I would.
What was that?
I feel cold.
Thank you, Bright Life.
Something outside.
The roadmap, we agree, was particularly successful this year. And hopefully we can continue to deliver that quality of roadmap in future years. That sure would be awesome. That's the goal. And I think we achieved our goals this year. So...
The dead have risen. Fell sorcery sends them against us.
Oops. I'm going to... I can't remember. There was a little bit more news I wanted to make sure that I mentioned. I got Scenarios stream next week. I got the fact that I'm not streaming next week. We got the Bull Roar preview. There is some updates to the Captain and Warden discussion that happened from a few weeks ago. There's an update on the Bull Roar forums that is well worth your time to take a look at if you were following that Captain Warden work from a few weeks ago. Oh, the Curator. The Curator's back. That's another one. Another bit of news there. Let me call up... Do I have that calendar? I do. Yeah, the Curator is back through the 15th as well, also being shut off at 3 a.m. Eastern on February 16th. Also on the 15th, we have a Virtue tier increase from 84 to 85. And along with the LI Season 5, we've got an LI eye level bump from 480 to 485. So the 15th of next week, 16th, 15th, 16th, is going to be a pretty busy time throughout Lotro. We have quite a few things happening. And then actually on the 16th at 10 a.m. Eastern, we got a VIP event kicking off. So it should be a pretty good time next week. Let me real quick call up while I'm at a moment to do so. If I can call up real quick, let me see if I can look at our calendar and get a better sense of our Bull Roar preview schedule. It'll take me just a second to try to call this up. So yeah, we are currently planning to do a second Bull Roar next week, roughly on Tuesday. I would also mention real quick, as long as I'm looking at it, it's possible that Wednesday's weekly maintenance is going to be longer than usual. There's a bunch of additional maintenance work that's being done on the 15th as well during that downtime period. So if I end up announcing something like a 9A to 1P, we're probably going to use all of it this Wednesday here. But we'll see how that goes. We may even actually extend it a little bit on either end. But we'll see how things go before then. Either way, Wednesday's going to have regular maintenance. We'll have the Bull Roar on Tuesday. Yeah, 3 a.m. on Thursday, Sarg Vorn leading the charge deed ends. And, oh, did I got timed out? Did I get timed out?
It is as I feared.
Oh, okay.
We should examine the northern approach to the town.
Okay. Well, let me do that here in just a quick second. Also, I happen to know I've got some tasks, I believe, to complete. All right, let me do that, though, real quick. Look at our schedule. Yes, and then I think it'll be a couple weeks after next week's Bull Roar, before we do our third Bull Roar preview, and that'll be a little bit closer to release. Although we might even do a fourth Bull Roar as well. We have one scheduled in as a tentative, if needed, kind of a thing. Otherwise, really, that pretty much rounds out the calendar for the month. We've got a patch set for roughly early March, and then after that it will be update 35, I think. So that's where we are there. Let me check chat. When Shadowfax reaches its level cap, the question is, how long will we have essentially until we close Shadowfax? Because, you know, that is the plan. Once the Legendary Worlds reach the regular game servers, that... Okay, collect tarnished jewelry. Where's that going to be? Give me a second here. Okay, I think I need to go behind me. Oh, I remember this. Yes. Okay. There's some jewelry that'll be back here-ish. I'm on a side quest here. So, I mean, it's not going to be right away. I think Honor is probably a fairly decent judge of it. So I know that, you know, we're going to go through Before the Shadow, right? On Shadowfax, and then probably, I would say, within a month or two, we'll start wrapping things up. Any more specific than that, I think I'd rather wait until we actually have dates and times and more information to provide to you. But yeah, it'll be relatively short order, I think. Once Shadowfax joins the regular game worlds, and Shadowfax moving as quickly as it does means it'll happen more quickly as well. This year, this spring, right? But I would expect the process to be very familiar to what we've done elsewhere recently, with Honor and Ithel and what have you. Alright, now that my map is a little clearer, where am I going? Off to the right here. What am I claiming? I'm not catching that. I'm also not finding this white jewelry. What am I looking for? Why am I not seeing it? Still off to the right. Okay. Out this way? Oh, over in this part of town, I bet. I remember it was I thought it was by... Oh, here we go. Okay. The suggestion, I've seen your suggestion on Druid's Fire, both now and elsewhere, about having LI reward tracks added to the curator. It's a cool idea. Old LI reward track items that are no longer available, maybe the curator could be a location to put that stuff. It certainly sounds like a reasonable suggestion, something we could do in the future to give further opportunity to acquire those items. I wouldn't want to commit, though, as to anything we might or might not do. It would ultimately be a decision that would need to be made by people who aren't me. But the idea of that being perhaps a suitable location for that quality of item sounds... I mean, that sounds pretty about right to me, right? That it would go from the LI reward track to something like a curator. You worked pretty hard to get that on the LI reward track. But I too would imagine people would like further opportunity to get that if they missed it the last time around. And having it be on a rotating vendor like that we sort of have designated for that purpose seems to make sense.
Even in the light of day, I find it hard to believe such things are possible.
I share Meneldir's amazement, but I do not like it.
Boromir is right. I have not seen Egfrit since we came outside.
Oh, I didn't realize what time it was. I guess I got sucked into the story here a little bit and just started talking, and I'm past my show. I guess I should have looked. Well, that's going to wrap it up then. I guess this is about as good a place as any for Court of the Rings to wrap up this week. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with me. I'll see you in 2 weeks with another Court of the Rings. We'll probably continue the gameplay story here and have the latest news and information per usual. Archives go up on YouTube and Facebook as well later this afternoon. Thanks, everyone, for being here, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.